What's up, YouTube? So today I'm gonna talk about some of the wrestlers that I grew up watching from the WWE, also known as the World Wrestling Entertainment. Now, although I don't really watch the product anymore, I still watch it from time to time from the old school wrestling era, from the 90s to the 2000s. So I watch a little bit from the Attitude Era, which was the late 90s, and then I will watch through the 2000s, which was the Roots of Aggression. I watched a little bit from the PG era, which was the least of my favorite to me because I wasn't really interested into the how you call it, the kiddie lambs or the cartoonish wrestling style. I know they had that in the the golden age, but to me, it felt like it was more cartoonish than the 80s and early 90s. So I never really got into it unless there were certain wrestlers that I grew up with was there, which I'll get to in a minute. So basically, my favorite, I'll go like maybe top three wrestlers that I'm a fan of and still to this day. And they still watch them from time to time when they appear, not in order. So the first one is gonna be this guy right here, Stone Cold Steve Austin. I got into liking Stone Cold Steve Austin. I believe I was about 3 years old, and back then we used to have this VHS tape. You put it on the VCR, which was probably around when I started watching wrestling. Give or take, probably was around 2001, maybe 2000. Not 100% sure about that, but um, you know, and I used to have this VHS tape called the WrestleMania 15, which there he was wrestling against The Rock for the at that time the WWF Championship. So ever since I started, like at first I started liking Stone Cold, and then I got to The Rock, which I'll get to The Rock in a minute. As soon as they saw him do the Stone Cold Stunner on The Rock and Vince McMahon, and you know, I was all into it. You know, Stone Cold was uh, was and still is my favorite wrestler of all time. To me, he's one of the greatest, if not the greatest wrestlers of all time. You know, some would debate that Hogan is a better wrestler or a bigger superstar than Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'm not gonna really get into that because you know Hulk Hogan wasn't. I mean, I grew up watching Hulk Hogan, but to me, the popularity for me was more Steve Austin because that time Hogan was with WCW and Hollywood and stuff like that. So I never really watched WCW, during those times, which I believe, I think in 2001, I think they were starting to shut down anyway. So, but even then, they still had the VHS tape. So, but I never really knew about WCW nor cared for it. So, so which is funny actually. I'll tell you a story how I got in contact with Stone Cold Steve Austin, was amazing. So I was graduating from high school. This was in 2017. I was a huge fan. So my goal was to get some, you know, get at least one celebrity that I can go and I can talk to, or at least get a response to, or whatever. So my mind was is that hopefully maybe one day they'll see me graduate on a high school or whatever, you know, or at least graduate or congratulate me from graduating. So Um, basically, I was talking to Stone. I had this email. I think Steve Austin. He had this email. Uh, I can't remember what was the email exactly, but maybe you guys can, you know, see on the Twitter, comment up below what was the, Steve Austin's email address. Because I think he put it on Twitter for fans to ask him questions or, whatever you want to say to him. So anyway, so there was one time where I think I lost my grandfather from my dad's side, and I got an email from Stone Cold Steve Austin himself. Now I know some of you might think that it might not be a real celebrity. At first, I didn't think about it. I didn't think it was, but after I looking through his Twitter account and I see that his email address or his email was the same address as I saw through my email account, I lost my mind. I was amped. I mean, I couldn't believe it in my own eyes. So, I couldn't sleep for like a few days after I saw that email. I mean, you guys know how it is when you get a response or you see a celebrity in person that you idolize and you grew up watching. You are memorized, you are shocked, you are surprised to see them. That's how I felt. Because to me, he was, like I said, he was one of the greatest, if not the greatest wrestlers of all time. So, so that basically, after that, it made me a fan of Steve Austin even more. And so that is my first of, that's one of my favorite wrestlers, of all time. The second one, which is interesting, is The Undertaker. Now, wrestling fans will know who was The Undertaker. For those who don't know, The Undertaker was basically he was basically one of the greatest superstars you ever see in the World Wrestling Entertainment, WWE, WWF, whatever you want to call it. He was the guy who would he would have a whole bunch of tattoos on his arms, and he would roll his eyes back up, and you would have the coat and then the hat. Man, I think I was like about I think I was about 6 years old when I started to notice The Undertaker. Now, to me, my favorite era of The Undertaker was the 90s Undertaker. To me, I don't know, I was a fan of like badass and monsters and, you know, just badass and monsters all around. So, like Steve Austin and Taker, for instance, I was a fan of those. So, you know, so so growing up with The Undertaker, man, I started liking him ever since I started watching him. And I was actually happy. I was glad that he was actually managed to open up himself when he was starting to retire, which I felt and I knew that he was going to retire because to me, it felt like that's when I think it was like a couple years ago, which was I think it was like 2018, where he started coming out of his character. And I said to myself, like, you know what? I have a good feeling he's gonna retire at some point. It may not happen today, it may not happen tomorrow, a year from now, but somewhere down the line, he's gonna retire. So then when he put out the last ride, which was last year, I had a feeling he was gonna retire on that documentary. If not the documentary, then after he did the documentary, after the documentary was released. Which, by the way, the last ride, if you haven't seen it, I suggest you go see it because it was a really, really good documentary, especially if you're an Undertaker fan like myself. So, so I was just amazed. I seen him in person, and he is tall. I mean, some of these wrestlers they were really tall, but when I saw Taker, man, I couldn't even talk after that. After seeing him perform or seeing him at the Royal Rumble, like I'll give you another story. This was when I was 9 years old, and I used to. My dad he had tickets to go see the Royal Rumble 2006, which was in Miami, Florida, which I used to live in that time. So, I see some different wrestlers, which, by the way, I was glad to see Chris Benoit. Don't know who Chris Benoit is. I just said you look him up because he was. I know WWE erased him for obvious reasons, but you could still watch his matches through still on the Peacock or or even on YouTube. You can watch it on YouTube and you can see some of his matches. His man, he was one of my favorite wrestlers. Not the top, but he was one of them. Like I would put Chris Benoit probably top 10 if I had to put. Which maybe I'll do like a top 10 favorite wrestlers on a video, maybe sometime. So anyway, so yeah, I watched I seen in person the Big Show, Kane, Bobby Lashley, um, RVD. I mean, you name it, Kurt Angle. So I was happy to see all those guys, but the main person that I wanted to see was the Undertaker, and I thought we weren't gonna see him up until, of course, after the match, after Kurt Angle had his match, which was the last match on the card. I heard the gong, the bell tone, and then when I heard that, I was shocked. I mean, my eyes was like big, like the kid at the like that guy who had his eyes big when when the when Brock Lesnar ended the Undertaker streak. You know, which I get into, my intake on, the streak being over. I'll get into that on the next video. Um, so anyway, so I was really shocked. I didn't think the Undertaker was gonna show up on Royal Rumble. So I saw him that, and my dad. I don't know if he has the video or whatnot, seeing me shocked, but I think it might have been, might have disappeared or erased because I mean that was like 2006, so it's like 10 plus years ago. So, um, but yeah, that was Undertaker. From that moment on, he was my favorite. So there goes the Undertaker. So I got Stone Cold Steve Austin, I got the Undertaker, and then the last person I'm a big time fan of is The Rock. The Rock is is the most electrifying man in sports entertainment. I mean, everybody should know who The Rock is. If you don't know who The Rock is, look him up because he's all over the place. The Rock. I mean, listen. People can say what they want. They can remember him in different other movies, the Fast and the Furious movies, the Game Plan, the Red Notice that he has now that's coming out that is on Netflix now. Um, you know, uh, they can remember him through any other movies, any other product that he sells. To me, it comes down to the wrestling days, when he first started as Rocky Maivia. No, not too many people know that he came from as Rocky Maivia when he first debuted as in the WWE. Man, I was a big time fan, still am, big time fan of The Rock. The Rock, he's very inspirational. He actually one of the reasons why I wanted to start working out. So to me, he's an inspirational person. I mean, not just in the ring, but outside of the ring or outside in Hollywood or business or whatever. He's man. Say what you want. I mean, everybody has different opinion of The Rock. My opinion, I think he seems like a good dude. He seems like he has that positive energy. He has that positive vibe. I have another story. This was about, let's say, about 2008. I had a cousin who was really sick. I think she had to go to the hospital because she had an asthma attack. So we're out in that hospital, There was this big, tall guy, probably like 6'3", 6'4", and he was like walking around, and he saw my cousin, and it was The Rock. They were shocked. My aunt and my cousin, they were completely shocked when they saw The Rock. I was jealous because I wasn't there. I wish I was, but turns out that it is what it is. Maybe one day I get to meet The Rock. It'll be a dream come true. But anyway, so um, so when I saw The Rock, so when I heard that she met The Rock, I was like, what? Man, I was jealous. And this time I was like around maybe 11 years old. I was like, man, I hope you see The Rock again, because then I would want to go with her. I was like, let me, take me with you the next time you go see him. I mean, this is like a kid mentality, it's imaginations and stuff like that. Um, so when she saw The Rock, The Rock had talked to my cousin and my aunt, and he even offered to take a picture. I mean, listen, to me, I don't know how can you say that's a bad thing. Maybe some people have bad experience with The Rock. As far as I'm concerned, what my cousin is saying, he seems like a good dude, maybe, but to me, I think so. Everybody has different opinions, and that's fine. You know, as long as you respect, as long as you have a respectful disagreement and you have a respectful opinion about it, then we won't have any issue. But anyway, I'm not gonna get into that. So those are my top. So that is my reasons why I like these wrestlers: Stone Cold, The Undertaker, and The Rock. Maybe further down the line, I'll get into more of the top 5 or top 10 wrestlers of all time, or my favorite top 10 wrestlers. So, but what about you guys? Let me know in the comments below. What is your top 3 favorite wrestlers, and tell us why. And if you like the video, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share with your friends and family. Okay, let's do this.